am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and welcome to the recap of my celebration live stream, where I was celebrating hitting 10 million video views here on the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel. I am amazed and so thankful that we have hit this milestone, and well, let's go look at the yarn that we dyed. Here are a single skein of most of the colorways I dyed in that 7.5 hour live stream. But I did actually start off with some color mixing, and let me go give you a little recap on that. We started the live stream doing some color mixing with Wilton Colorway in base pink, orange, and blue. Now, this is also a project that I am filming for a Dye Pot Weekly episode, so the finished dry triangle will be in that episode. But check out the range of colors that we have when I basically have divided this into 3 sets after steaming it in the microwave. There is more variation in those mixed oranges than it did originally appear. This teal that was 3 parts blue, 1 part orange is probably one of my favorites out of this whole bunch that I mixed. But I also really love these muted tones. Every single 20-gram mini skein that I have has a total of 4 drops of food coloring. And so it's really amazing to see the difference in the saturation of these colors versus these brights. But anyway, make sure that you are subscribed to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel and turn on your notifications so you don't miss any new videos. And when I release this, probably later this summer, early this fall. But I definitely want to do some more colorway and acid dye color mixing. So there's more of that on my plan. That color mixing video will be a edited episode of Dye Pot Weekly, along with one other of these colorways. And that is this beautiful green tonal yarn with white neps. I dyed this yarn with a 1.5% depth of shade of Dharma Forest Green, and I used a cool that technique overnight outside so that way we could check in at different points and see how these neps were popping. This yarn is 84% superwash merino, 16% cotton acrylic neps. And since the cotton and acrylic isn't dyed with acid dyes, then you get these light specks on a deeper base, which is something that people often wish they could achieve. They often wish they could get reverse speckles like this. The only small issue is that cotton can take some staining from acid dyes, so these neps are not as bright as they were on the bare yarn where you couldn't really see them. And I also think that because some of this fiber is going throughout the yarn and not just in the neps, it means that the total depth of shade that we see is less than if I had dyed the same depth of shade on a skein of just bare yarn. And actually, that's a comparison I should do at some point. The heathering isn't as apparent on this green as it is on this deeper color, where I mixed forest green, black, and dark navy. And I used, not quite, but I was approaching a 2% depth of shade of each of these colors, which would be 2 grams of dye per 100 grams of yarn. This deep colorway is so fun, and from back here you really can see those little brighter specks. And I think it is really beautiful. I do just wish that there was a little bit more contrast. Maybe I wish that the neps were just all acrylic, so that way they didn't potentially get any staining, so that would make them more of a pure white against the backdrop of the color. That being said, I do think I need to try to push the depth of shade even darker, and maybe that'll give us even more contrast. I think if you look really closely at the yarn right there, you can start to see some of that heathering that I'm talking about. Yeah, and maybe now if I bring it even closer, I think that it is a little bit blown out, but that makes some of the heathering that we see in those strands a little more apparent. Which, if you think about it, makes sense. This yarn is 16% cotton and acrylic, but you know, and it makes sense that the neps would go all the way through the yarn a little bit, but this isn't something I've paid attention to on a Donegal yarn in the past, even though the neps usually are never dyeable. This yarn base does really excite me. I think that there is something really, really fun about it. But in looking at the more unique neps that are available from Wool to Dye For, the multicolored rainbow neps are my favorite. I knew that I wanted to do a layered deep purple color with the Donegal neps, but I wasn't sure quite what colors I wanted. So I started out by prototyping on some Knit Pick Stroll, which is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. And in both of these, I did a 0.8% depth of shade of royal purple acid dye, and then a 0.25% depth of shade layered on top of that of dark navy or true black. And the viewers of the live stream agreed with me that we should go with the layered navy versus the black. I like that this is a bit bluer. The black layered is a bit redder, but I think that this is closer to that purple that I wanted. I layered the colors on this yarn versus mixing them in advance. And part of that is that I wanted there to be a little bit of range in the depth and maybe a few different hues from where they were layered together. Now, our yarn with the rainbow neps that is in the middle wasn't quite the bare off-white. It did have a little bit more depth to it already. And so I'm really glad I went with the navy because I feel like that this is a tiny bit almost redder than the navy stroll prototype that's on the far left. But I love this purple. This is possibly one of my favorite purple hues in the world. Just like with the white neps, when you are dyeing this, the neps act a little bit as a sponge, so they'll hold the colored liquid and therefore you can't see them. But ooh, do these yellow, pink, and blue neps really, really spark on the finished yarn. I believe that there's some green and orange, maybe not purple in there, but really what shows through are the pink, blue, and yellow because they have a lot of contrast with this purple, so that works really, really nicely. I would love to see this with just black yarn. I think that that would be really amazing. This yarn base is 85% superwash merino, 15% Donegal net, and it actually does come in DK as well as fingering weight. I wasn't aware of this before, but it is available as a DK, which is awesome. Now, I dyed this prototype in a cool vat, doing the purple first and then layering the navy on top of it. And since everything was so cool, I was able to move the yarn through a lot, which allowed me to get a pretty good distribution of the two colors on top of one another. When I went and dyed 3 at the same time in a pot, even though the proportions of dye to acid to volume were the same, since there's more yarn in there and I was not able to stir things up quite as much, we do have some more tonal variation, some more spots that are a brighter, more pinkish purple, and some spots that are a more deep navy, which I think is beautiful. Both are wonderful. And here you really can see how layering the colors allows you to get dark and light patches of both the purple and the navy layered on top of one another, which is just a totally different feel than if you had two colors that didn't break and then you put it in at one time. You could have some pastel areas and deep areas, but not necessarily the different hues that we see here. I added the navy at almost the 7-hour point in the live stream, and where I have the bottle, you can't see the label, so I can't tell for sure, but from the level of dye in the bottle, I do think I did add the navy. It's just that because this navy color is a little bit more concentrated in some of these areas, that's why things, I guess, almost look a little bit more black. At least that's what I think. You do feel a little bit of the heathering in here as well, but maybe because it's a purple, it doesn't feel as obvious as when I was going with the white neps. I suppose this also goes to show how sometimes dye lot can make a difference. And if the purple was maybe it was a little more concentrated in the second batch, then that could have made a difference as well. So that is just worth keeping in mind. There are dye lot differences even when you're doing it yourself. But I do enjoy both of these colors very, very much. The first time I ever tried dyeing yarn with twisted skeins in a steam pan, I got a comment from someone to go and check out ChemKnits' Instagram page. This dyer has so many amazing videos dyeing yarn using really large volumes of water to pour onto the yarn in various layers, and I knew I wanted to try that technique for myself. I will link ChemKnits' Instagram down in the video description if you want to go check out those videos. Dyeing 400 grams of yarn at the same time in a pan, I layered sour apple, then some extreme blue, then some chartreuse. And then at the end, each time I flipped, sometimes I twisted, sometimes I left it untwisted. At the end I did just like 2 more milliliters of the 1% stock of extreme blue in 4 cups of water just to add a little bit more pastel on some white areas. But I am thrilled with how this blue, green, teal colorway has turned out. I didn't film this part of the live stream as an episode of Dye Pot Weekly, but I do plan to do something like this for Dye Pot Weekly in the future, where I show these layering of colors in more up-close detail so that way you can watch me explore it. But I am so excited by this technique and how consistent we are over 400 grams of yarn. This was so much fun to create like this softness in the layered colors. Speaking of twisting yarn in the pan, I twisted 4 skeins of that yak in my steam pan and speckled it, and I got more coverage faster than I think I ever have before. And I did do some flips and add some more color, but ultimately I am so happy with the coverage that we got on all of these skeins. That yak is 70% superwash merino, 20% yak, 10% nylon. And since the starting color is that like a dark oatmeal, it can be really, really hard to tell how much color coverage that you have. For example, we have this pale pink base with these purple, pink, and blue speckles on it from just Frozen and Purple Pop. But I wasn't sure how much pink spread we actually had on the yarn until it was dry. All right, we are in my closet and let's look at this under a black light. Now I do see some areas that glow pink a little bit all over, but I'm not seeing a ton of color. You can see some areas where I'm focusing the light that show up fairly pink. And so we do have that fluorescent pink in here. In the areas where we have our purple speckles from that Purple Pop, there's a lot of spread. And the more spread of the colors, the less it'll glow. And if we go back and look at some of the rainbow colors that I've done on this yak base, the 2 main fluorescent pigments, pink and yellow is so much brighter. So orange, green, and yellow really glow. Pink is more subtle, and Purple Pop is even more subtle because it has that blue mixed in, which makes it a little bit less bright. So I think that is probably the reason why we don't see a lot, because I was trying to be very careful and not overdo the Purple Pop here. I love this yak blend, and I know I plan to dye a lot more of it in the future. We did also have a yarn mop, and I'm sure, I'm not going to go back into the closet, but I'm sure that this one would glow. The pinks are way, way, way more intense here, as are the blues. I use this to wipe my fingers on as we were speckling the other yarn. Finally, the last colorway I dubbed the not Broken Violet colorway, where I took some extreme blue, pink orchid, and some royal purple, and very lightly hand painted this yarn. The colors struck really quickly because I had high acid to create this soft colorway that evokes the colors of my logo, but not being done with food coloring. Side note, I think it would be really fun to try to actually mix colors and create a dupe for the dip-dyed Broken Violet colorway that I get with food coloring. It would take a fair amount of trial and error to get the colors right, but that would be something that could be fun to do in the future. Here are all, except for the food coloring color mixing, of the colorways I dyed in the celebration live stream. I had so much fun developing these colors live. I had some ideas of what I wanted to do technique-wise, but it was really fun at various points to ask the stream what color I should use next or the direction that I should try to go. And I really love the whole interactive process of dyeing yarn live. I am so proud with how all of these prototypes, well, I mean, I called them prototypes during the stream, but really these are all final, complete, developed colorways. If you pre-ordered one of these prototypes from the live stream, it is now on the way. If you have not received your tracking number yet, you should receive it within the next 24 hours. I can't wait for you to see your yarn. I am so proud with how they turned out. And I've picked 3 of them to offer as dyed to order listings in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. It isn't often that I do a dyed to order kind of listing or dye up more of a color that I've done in the past. But I'm really excited to do this to help celebrate hitting 10 million views on this channel. And are you ready to see the 3 colorways I am going to dye more of? Here they are! I am going to dye more of the deep purple with the rainbow neps, more of this beautiful layered green in either fingering or DK weight yarn, and then I'm going to dye more of the That Yak base with the pink, purple, and blue speckles on it. I really enjoyed all of the colorways I created as part of the celebration live stream, but I think these 3 are some of my favorites, and I'm really excited to dye up more of them. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in to the it's about 1.5 minutes short, almost 7.5 hour dyeing live stream, or watching the replay, or really just watching any of the videos here on this channel. I love to dye yarn, and I love to share my process and discoveries and failures with all of you, and so I really appreciate you joining me on my color journey. I don't think I'm going to try to break my personal record stream length going forward, but I do hope, and especially once September hits, to do more long live streams and share lots of yarn dyeing and color development live here on the channel. But I do always have a dyeing live stream at least once a month, and so you can always tune in to the ChemKnits Dye Along live streams to join me and watch as I develop different colorways. Please don't forget to subscribe to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new video releases. And the pre-orders are now up in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop, along with a few other skeins of yarn dyed in this live stream and the watermelon yarn from the July ChemKnits Dye Along. You can find a link to the pre-order listing and my shop down in the video description. And now I have some editing to do. I have a little bit of a backlog of videos that are at various stages of filming that I need to edit to share with all of you. You may notice that there are still a lot of videos where I have long hair intermixed with the ones in short. Things are filmed very much out of order, but I love sharing my whole process with you, and I really hope that you enjoy it as well. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and thank you so much for watching.